I'm Chris, you're watching FRAG-MENTAL, thank you for joining me. So, there's a brand new release from Tom Ford, Black Orchid Parfum. I'll be talking about this with a good friend of mine in this video, so stay tuned. So, not only do we have a brand new release from Tom Ford, we've got something else that's brand new for my channel. I've got a good friend of mine, Tony, from the YouTube channel FRAG-MENTAL, joining me. How are you, Tony?
Hi Chris, thanks for having me on your channel. Very kind of you.
You're very welcome. We've been on screen before, we've done lives on your channel, but this is the first time you're coming on my channel, so it's good to have you.
Well, I really appreciate it, thank you.
No, not at all. So you've recently been on a sniffing trip to London, which I'm very jealous about. I love a good London sniffing trip, where you picked up this fragrance.
I did, yeah. We had a lovely trip. Me and my wife decided to have some time away from the children. Not done that over lockdown, as you can imagine. So it's a long time coming, and we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. We were all sniffed out over that weekend. But there was a fragrance that jumped out to us both. We had bought a couple of things, but we got to Sunday morning, and one of the first shops to open in Covent Garden was the Tom Ford boutique. Now, all over that weekend, we've been to a couple of Tom Ford stands, and they didn't have it on display. And then, in all its glory, there we see it on the stand, and the very kind assistant, who, if you don't mind, Chris, I'd love to give a shout out.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
His name was Marco, and he worked in the Tom Ford boutique in the middle of Covent Garden. Fantastically helpful and enthusiastic guy, very knowledgeable too. And he spent maybe about half an hour with us in total. And you know what it's like when we go in a shop and we geek out. It was nice to speak to someone that was on a similar level to us and really enjoyed his fragrances too. Got to sniff lots, but this really jumped out at us. So we decided to pull the trigger.
Well, you can't beat a good London sniffing trip. I've done many of those, and I hope many more to come. And hopefully the next one we can team up and do some sniffing together, Tony.
That would be fantastic.
So shout out to Marco for giving Tony such good service in the Covent Garden store. So obviously, you know, you smelled this in store, you bought it. So at this stage, we can safely say that you like this fragrance.
100%, yeah. And you know, you've spoken to my wife, Chris, you know that she's very fussy with her fragrances, and actually this was, I've got to admit, it was her purchase, but I was secretly so pleased, as you can imagine.
Good. So I would say that this is very similar to the Black Orchid Eau de Parfum. There are a few differences in notes and in the smell. We are going to break that down for you in this video, but before we do that, we are going to do what we always do and take a look at the bottle and the notes.
So in the top we have truffle, plum, and in the mid we have black orchid.
Also in the mid there's ylang ylang, rum, and then in the base, patchouli. Okay, so a few different notes in this. Let's talk about the first one that's different, and that's the plum. I don't think that's in the original. Do you get any plum from this one, Tony?
Didn't think I did, but there was another fragrance that was pointed out to me in store, and it's got some similarities. So if you sniff it, you can't really pick out the plum. It is there. There is something red in there, I detect. But what was pointed out to me, it has a real similar note to Plum Japonais by Tom Ford in Private Blend.
Ah.
And that, when I sniffed that alongside it, I could really see the similarity and where the plum is. And I quite like that.
That's great. I mean, I don't think the plum here, I'll be honest, I didn't think, okay, beautiful plum opening at all. I'm not saying that plum isn't there, because you get this general fruitiness. And I find, let's talk about the opening in general, because I find the opening of the new Parfum to be more rounded and richer and a little deeper than the earlier EDP. And I find plum to be a really nice rounded fruity note, so maybe it's the presence of plum that is causing this main difference in the opening. But it's it's a really lovely opening. Was there anything else you got from the opening that you wanted to mention at all?
Yeah, in the opening I got, it felt like a lot of the top notes have been stripped away from the EDT and the EDP to me. So it almost went straight to the DNA very quickly. So it strips away a lot of the top notes. It's almost like it's just a lot of the mid and bass notes. So you don't get a lot of citruses or anything in the top. So it was a little different, but it's still got a similar DNA.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And actually, I felt there was a floral component in the opening of the EDP that was a little sharper and maybe leaned more feminine, which isn't present in the new Parfum, which actually I liked. I mean, I can wear Black Orchid, I have no problem with it, but I think a lot of guys feel that it's right on that boundary of being too feminine. Yeah. But I think that the slight difference in the opening here perhaps takes that floral edge off the opening, so I really liked it for that.
Yeah, I agree.
So the other thing that's different here is there's rum in this, and I must admit, before I smelled this fragrance I thought I'm going to love this straight away, because I usually love any fragrances with rum in. I just think it's a beautiful accord. Would you describe this as a boozy fragrance?
No, I don't think I would. Again, I'm going to draw it back to that Plum Japonais. That's got a liquor note in. This has obviously got a rum note. There was similar DNA between the two, and I wouldn't call this a boozy fragrance at all. I didn't get a lot of booze. Did you get any booze from it? I personally didn't.
No, I wouldn't describe it as a boozy fragrance. Again, rum is a note that I find is a lovely rich, deep type of note. So perhaps the rum here is adding some of this richness, this added richness and depth and roundedness that I get from the Parfum compared to Black Orchid. And I must say at this stage that I find this very similar to the EDP. The differences in my eyes are very minimal, but you know, we have to point them out in this kind of video. But there are a few differences, but I think they're just subtle. And I think, although it's not a boozy fragrance, I think the presence of rum here is causing that scent profile to smell a little richer. Smell more like a Parfum actually than the EDP.
I agree. The Parfum is the perfect name for this fragrance. It sits a bit deeper and darker on the skin, but it's smoother somehow. It is smoother, yeah. It's definitely smoother, and I think maybe the rum is playing a big part in that.
Yeah, and sometimes when designer fragrances come out and it's a Parfum version, it is still an eau de parfum concentration, and it usually tells you on the bottom of the bottle, and it does say that this is Parfum, so I'm assuming that this is Parfum concentration in terms of the oils used in here. And for that reason, I feel it is a stronger fragrance. I get more. I get a slightly bigger smell and a longer lasting fragrance from this Parfum compared to Black Orchid. Do you get a similar experience, or is it different?
Yeah, I do. I think it doesn't project in a room as much. It still projects enough and quite a few feet. My wife wore this to work, and I walked into her office the other day. It's a big office, and as soon as I walked in I could smell it. So it definitely projects very well for a Parfum. But I just love the way it sits on the skin. I really do. It's just so smooth. This is, I think, quite a bit smoother than the original, although it shares that very similar DNA.
I mean, the original is smooth enough, isn't it? It's a smooth as hell fragrance with great performance. But I would agree, I think this is just a touch smoother and maybe a little creamier. I know that I think the Ylang Ylang is maybe dialed up a little more in the Parfum version, and Ylang Ylang always comes across to me as a slightly creamy indolic white floral, so perhaps that's the reason. But overall, yeah, it's definitely a smoother fragrance. I get the same profile as Black Orchid. I get the lovely chocolatey fruits and patchouli. So bearing in mind that the scent profile is so similar to the original, would you, if you already had Black Orchid, would you own both?
I think I would, and the reason for that is because to me it's not as loud. The original on me, I think I've said to you off camera, Chris, is I've got a love-hate relationship with it, and the reason for that is I just find it, to me, just slightly too pungent. It's a little heady. I love the smell of it, and I love the DNA, and I love the patchouli that comes through, and I love this sort of phantom Black Orchid Accord that Tom Ford have created. It's an incredible fragrance, and I love smelling it on other people, and it's one of the most instantly recognisable fragrances on the marketplace, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an iconic smell, and I think that's why they've not changed the scent profile too much, because people are buying into that iconic smell of Black Orchid, and you're still going to get that.
And you still get that, exactly. You don't lose that with this fragrance. So you've asked the question of would I have it alongside it. I've gone into that detail because I was worried that this fragrance wouldn't fix those things for me, and to me it does. I would definitely reach for this more because it is a smoother blend. It's still got that DNA, but to me it isn't as pungent. It's definitely a much smoother and easier fragrance to wear, in my opinion.
Okay, would you so you find this easier for you to wear as a man than the EDP?
Perfectly, and I think that is possibly because of that plum accord and the rum accord, which you're right, they don't really jump out a separate accord. It's so well blended, very difficult to pick those out, but I think it's helping smooth this blend out, and I don't get that same white floral that you mentioned. I don't get that same opening. This goes straight to the DNA, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, I would agree, actually. I enjoy wearing the original, but I would say this has less of that element of am I in the mood for this slightly feminine leaning floral fragrance today? That takes a little bit of that out of the equation. I would say that if people have an issue with the original being way too feminine, if it's way too feminine for you, it may not fix the issue for you. You may still think that this new parfum is the same, really. But if you were just kind of in the middle, if you were kind of on the fence about maybe I could, maybe I couldn't, like you are, Tony, I think the parfum could very well be the version for you. But if you already own Black Orchid EDP and you're fine with that, I would probably say, because this does smell similar, you might not want to own both of those. Tony, let's just get into a little bit of what I call the fragment, which is what people want to know about. How did you find the performance? I know we touched on this, but we can go into a little more detail about the performance.
I think the performance is excellent. It projects immediately as soon as you spray it out of the bottle. As soon as you spray it out of the bottle, you can get that DNA instantly, and it just goes on and on and on. On me, it projects fairly well. It sits weirdly, Chris, it sits a bit closer on my skin than it does on Rebecca's, and we've sniffed it side by side on each other, and it definitely sits more feminine on her skin than it does on mine. On mine it does become a slightly more masculine fragrance, which is, I think, fantastic when I want to wear it. But performance-wise, I got easily 8 hours plus. It lasts a whole working day, no problem at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I got, this hangs around. This is not a fleeting fragrance. I love a scent that gives me constant wafts for the 8 to 10 hours that I'm wearing it. I definitely get that from this. In terms of projection, you know, sometimes parfum concentrations, because there's less alcohol, they can project less. I found projection on this was fantastic for me. I didn't feel like it was just a close to the skin parfum at all. And I also found that the overall smell was a little stronger, and on my skin it lasted longer as well. So as it dries down, obviously projection fades, but as a skin scent it was a very strong skin scent, and so because of that it still projects. So performance is just stellar on this. I would go as far as to say beast mode, but in a refined and elegant way. It's definitely a unisex fragrance. I know we're saying this may be a bit more suitable for men, but I think, as you've said, Rebecca can really rock this well, so it's 100% unisex. So I think that kind of wraps it up. We will do a little conclusion just at the end, but we cannot go without giving you a plug, Tony. So I would urge you all to go and follow this man. His channel is growing and growing. Tony's a great presence in the community. His live streams that he does most Sundays are absolutely fantastic, and they're just a lot of fun. So I will leave Tony's details to his Instagram and his YouTube channel in the description below. So if you've enjoyed watching his handsome face on screen today, go and subscribe. And also we need to shout out your wife Rebecca's Instagram account, Addicted Snaps. I will leave a link to her account. Some amazing, Rebecca's a photographer, so her photos are stunning. So if you want to see some tasty photos of bottles, go and follow both of them on Instagram. So Tony, let's just wrap this up. You know, let's tell people what they want to know. Is it a sexy fragrance?
Definitely, 100% yes.
Does it get compliments?
Yes, it will definitely get you compliments. I haven't had one yet. I've worn it for a couple of days, but I was around the house, so I think that don't think that counts.
And does it have fantastic performance?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so shall we give it a rating? Shall we give it a rating out of 10? Are you prepared to do that? Would you like to rate it? Yeah,
why not? I'm going to give this a solid 8.5.
Okay, that's a good score. I'm going to go with a 9. I just think it's a really well composed, smooth fragrance. It ticks all the boxes for what I like out of a scent. I think this is a beautiful release from Tom Ford, and I'm going to thoroughly enjoy wearing this, particularly as we get into the autumn. I think because it's got lots of depth and density to it, I think this will really work beautiful in the autumn. So hey Tony, thanks for joining me. We'll wrap it up, but it's been a pleasure having you on the channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on, Chris, and thank you so much for your lovely shout out. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Let's do this again sometime.
Definitely.
Okay, well that wraps it up. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this brand new style of review with Tony. If you've tried this fragrance, please leave some comments down below, because everyone gets a different thing and it's useful for the other people watching this video to see that. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Thank you very much for watching. It is always greatly appreciated. Remember, keep tuning into FM, keep smelling good, and I'll see you in the next video.